Hello and welcome. This is the first edition of the Whizzkids podcast. We don't know how regularly we're going to do them, but this is just a test run. My name's Martin, and tonight Andy and James are with us. Edvard is not, because he does not have a microphone on his computer. Right, well, introduce yourself, lads.
I'm Andy. I live in Cleethorpes, so I'm known as A on the page.
Hello, I'm James from Scotland. I've been with the page since day one, about just over 3 years ago. So, yeah, you'll see me commenting as Jay, and that's me.
I comment as M for anyone who was a bit confused there. So right, well, tonight we're going to discuss a couple of things and, try and have a bit of cracking banter. So first of all, we're going to, at the moment I'm doing a save with Everton. It's going pretty well, but it's actually getting quite boring at this stage. I think I'm going to have to start a new save because I started my current save before James finished the transfer window, and I might go at Man United to try Falcao, or I might Di Maria and stuff, or I don't know, I might try and go low again because my Barnet save was pretty much the most fun thing I did this whole FM. Lads?
I'm currently doing a Leverkusen save. I did start with Liverpool after the summer transfer window database came out, but unfortunately it is ridiculously easy now doing a Liverpool save. I mean, silly easy. The team is pretty much perfectly set up for FM. All the players are all improving, so I just want losing the game. So I got to about Christmas and I gave it up and started with Leverkusen. And I've just got past the first transfer window with them. It's going okay. I've lost twice, once in the Champions League and once in the league against Dortmund. So I'm pretty pleased with it so far.
And how's the Asian lad going for you? I almost signed him myself. Song Min, or what's his name?
He's been okay. He scored a couple of goals. I've been using him up front because I don't use wingers at the moment, so I've been using him as my advanced forward. He's scored a couple of goals, but I actually prefer Kiesling up front alongside that Swiss lass Dermick. But none of them really I'm that pleased with as forwards. They're not really my type of forwards. None of them's got enough creativity for me. I like a lot more creativity in my forwards. So once I can sell them, I'll be looking to move all of them out, I reckon.
And are you thinking of starting with anybody soon, James?
I'm going to start a new save soon. I don't currently have one. I've been working on the database a lot and I've not really had much time to put a couple of days effort into a save instead of just an hour here or two, but you don't really get much done in that time. So I've currently got a Sporting Lisbon and Norwich save in my save games library. I loaded up the Sporting one recently, but I couldn't really get back into it, so I can't see going back to them.
Have you ever been able to do that, James?
Pardon?
Once you've left a save, have you ever been able to go back and then carry that save on?
No, I went back and played maybe another couple of games, but it's not really the same. Once you leave it, you can't go back.
Yeah, I've never been able to.
No, I think I'm going to try a new save in Italy soon. I think I'm going to go AC Milan and try and bring them back to the glory days and maybe try and make something out of Torres, because nobody else can at the minute.
At all?
I kept the Southampton save that I'm always talking about. I kept that going for about 10 months on Football Manager 13. After I'd done the first 10 seasons, I kept on stopping playing it for 2 months or so at a time and going back to it. But it is tough. It is kind of, once you start that new save, 99% of the time you will never go back to the previous game, I find. But so that's our current saves. Did you watch any of the games tonight, lads?
Yeah, I watched all the way up until about 75 minutes with Liverpool, then I had to go back down to work. So I just missed the goals and everything. I'd seen when I came in, but unfortunately I missed all the goals. But yeah, I caught them up when I came back in. So I really wasn't surprised about Liverpool struggling through the game, if I'm honest. I knew they was going to have a tough time of it. Just because it's the first game back in the Champions League after 5 years. Back at home, you're going to be a bit nervous. the side's still trying to gel. So I wasn't surprised that they made hard work of it tonight, really.
I watched the Arsenal and Dortmund game myself. I think James did as well. And yeah, Dortmund were very good. They really were. It was quite a game actually. I really enjoyed it. What do you think of it, James?
Yeah, I watched that. Well, I was actually watching both games on different TVs, but my main focus was on the Arsenal game, and they could have conceded another 4 or 5 goals easy. Dortmund were quite impressive. That was without Hummels, Royce, or Kagawa. He didn't start. So that was my main attention. I did keep an eye on the Liverpool game, but once it went 1-1, I really thought the game was finished. Just turned my back on it. It wasn't until I got home that I seen Liverpool got a penalty right at the death and 1-2-1. So I was a bit surprised. I mean,
was Goodonian playing for Dortmund as well, or was he out?
Pardon?
Was Goodonian, was he playing as well?
He wasn't playing.
So
They were missing quite a few players.
I only noticed that tonight when the commentator said it. I hadn't realised it. Gundogan, he's been out for a solid year now.
Yeah.
Over a year now. I think the Champions League final might have been the last game he played. I'm not actually 100% sure on that, but if he's been out for a whole year, I think it might have been, But yeah, no, it was a good game, and there was some other interesting results. Yeah, it's Zenit winning away at Benfica. Monaco beat Leverkusen. Madrid smashed Basel, as we know, and Olympiacos' win against Atletico Madrid was pretty decent. Matroglu got back scoring again.
It was a good
what
result
else?
by Anderlecht as well, to draw away at Galatasaray. That's a good result.
There was a few decent games in the Championship tonight as well. Not going to go through very many of them, but Leeds actually got a decent 3-1 away win. And who else was there? And Blackpool lost again.
That's becoming a theme, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Moving swiftly onwards. FM 15 is coming up pretty soon, and there was a lot of complaints about the match engine in FM 14. Didn't bother me so much myself. Any thoughts on that, lads?
Yeah. Well, I think I've been discussing this recently, how from FM 12 to FM 13 there was a big jump and it was quite different, but 13 to 14 there hasn't been that big of a change. They're quite similar, and as far as I'm aware there's over 4,000 changes to the new game, so I think it's going to be quite a big difference, and I'm glad because the last 2 years seem to be quite similar, so I'm glad about that. As for the match engine, it's never going to be 100%. Everybody's never ever going to be happy with it. It's just the way it is. The losers don't like it, the winners love it. Simple as that.
It's not so much.
Well, they do. It does seem. Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, it's not so much the match engine that's the problem as with the tactics and things. I think terminology is the biggest issue. The way they've changed it from the sliders to put all this kind of like descriptive tactics in, but a lot of it I don't think they've worded very well. Do you know, things like you can't. With pressing, the only way you can get your side to press is by hassling opponents, but it's not really how you would do it. You'd either say, like, press it over the whole pitch, or press at your halfway line, or just press when they come into your half.
Yeah, I think it was a big thing, taking out the sliders. A lot of people didn't like it. For me, it made it a bit more realistic. You don't have sliders in real life. You don't need them. It made it too easy.
I mean, when you go back to the sliders, the way you'd be able to put like how much your side press, that you could like slide it up and down. You could do that with terminology. You can say if you want them to like fully across on the bar, you say your team to press over the whole pitch. If you wanted them to just
sorry lads, I have to go away for a minute.
Sorry, mate.
Keep talking there.
Like I say, if you wanted to get your side to only be like halfway across the bar, you'd put, you'd get your team to press to halfway, and then if you wanted them to not press at all, you say just press in your own half, and that's a way you could have had like the sliders in the game, but use it in terminology.
So maybe there could be a compromise of having some sliders in and some taken away, because almost all your tactics when they had them were based on sliders, and you weren't really doing much.
I just think they need to word it a bit better. The way when you go into the options and you go to like edit and to choose how you want your teams to play, there's a lot of it is a little bit kind of like hazy. Do you know what I mean? There's not very descriptive. There'd be better ways. It's just like it's ridiculous that there isn't an option to choose a playmaker anymore.
Yeah.
Do you know
Well,
what
that's
I mean?
why.
I don't know why they took that out of the game. It's not like any team would do that in real life. If you was a manager, if you picked a team of like Liverpool, Rodgers, Gerrard's the playmaker. Do you know what I mean? The fact that that's been taken out of the game to me seems a bit daft. I just think what they've done is they took away the sliders and they've just gone completely in the other way of the direction where they've got nothing at all left in it. And I think they need to get the balance right. They need to get the wording a bit right, the way it works a little bit right, the terminology a bit right. And I think people have a lot less hassle with the tactics that they have this year.
Yeah, I'm also intrigued by the new player roles that were brought in last year, such as the regista, the complete wing back, all of them. I'm interested to see if they're going to add any more or take them away, because a lot of people still don't know what they are, which is very frustrating because we keep telling people what they are because it tells you in the game. But how many teams actually use them words in real life and actually use them positions?
It's only ever really heard like the false nine, don't you? That's really it. I mean, up until it was in FM, I've never heard of the engaged. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the trequartista, or
Yeah.
whatever it's called. I remember hearing Miles Jacobson talking about that on a podcast, how a lot of Spanish clubs use it. It's basically just an attacking midfielder that plays behind the striker. I think they used Michu of Swansea, now on loan in Napoli, as an example of that position.
Yeah, but to me, that to me just would be a deep line forward, personally. Do you know what I mean? That's how I would look at it as.
I'm back now, by the way.
Alright.
If you get what I'm saying. But most people that play it, they don't spend the time to understand what a lot of the things in the tactics mean. Like,
that's what I mean. In the player roles, it actually tells you what every single one means. It's almost like people are too lazy to actually check it out and read it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how all I've done. Do you know what I mean? I've wasted time of my life, but sitting and reading through every single one of the player roles, and then seeing what happens when I switch it from support to defence, or from defence to support, or from support to attack, and seeing how that affects it, and just basically just reading everything to get myself accustomed to it before I start building my tactic. I mean, that's how I learnt it.
One of the things I look forward to every year with the new game is the new Wonder Kids. Is there any Wonder Kids who you think are not in this year's game who will come into the new one and you think they could do quite well? Any early predictions?
I'm not sure. I was talking to Miles on Twitter about this the other day, and he was saying the hard role is if they're not 16 before the season starts, there won't be an FM. So by that logic, everybody's favourite Odegaard, he's not going to be in next year's FM. According to Miles, anyway. The reason why that Crowley at Arsenal's looking is because he literally, I think he turned 16, something like about 3 days before the season starts. And that's the only reason why he made it in the game. So, cause I questioned him on that because he said anybody under 16 can't be in the game. Well, I said, what about Crowley? And he said, oh yeah, but he turned 16 a few days before the season starts.
Ah, right, okay.
So it
I
could be difficult.
think the one to look out for is Mastur of AC Milan, who seems to be known for a couple of years now, and he's meant to be a really good player. So I think he could be the one that everyone looks forward to using if he's of age to be in the game.
I think he's the only one out of all of them that's going to make it. I think that we've added on our database. I think he's
no.
That's the one thing I actually don't. The one small issue I have with when you add Wonder Kids to the database, like all the different data packs, people have been doing it for years. That we've only recently started doing it ourselves. Is that it does remove the anticipation of finally getting these players into the game. You know, like you know, Mastur, everyone's going to be looking forward to him. But in saying that, everybody's used them all the way through FM 13 and 14 now.
It's not the same though, is it? I mean, it's everybody's interpretation of him. The real player could be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like with Odegaard. By the time he is in the game, say FM 16, we're going to be using him for already a year and a half now, so it's not going to be as exciting as what it would be.
Yeah, probably not, but it depends. Because again, he'd be in there, he'd have the real picture, it'll be the SI's version of it. it'll just be a completely different player to what we've used, and I think I'll be looking forward to that personally, to see how SI interpret him, whether or not we're close. Our opinion is close to what SI think he is. I think that's something you would look forward to seeing him in the game. I mean, he might sneak it in, because technically speaking, the Norwegian season doesn't start till March 2015, by which time Odegaard would be 16. So he may creep in, but it depends whether SI go by our league start date or whether it actually goes by the official Norwegian league start date. I don't know.
I'm sure they have a cut-off point at some stage. This guy, myself and James used to always talk to a lot, who used to think he was quite a big deal. He once told me that there was the cut-off point for, I'm not going to mention his name at all. There's a cut-off point. It's almost like it's even before the transfer window shuts. There's a cut-off point where they lock the database. In terms of where they're not adding anything else. All they'll do is update transfers and stuff like that.
I'm sure it's the end of July.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I reckon that's going to change this year, because they've put a lot of it back really. Usually by September time you're seeing features for the game. By about mid-October time, the game's going to be coming out around the end of October, but they put the release date back. And I'm wondering whether that is to allow for a bit more changes to happen between the transfer window closing and the release of the game this year, because they must have had all the features locked in place by now.
Yeah, from what James said a few weeks ago about them already working, putting the work in for like FM16 or maybe 17, was it?
They're on 17 now.
Yeah, I'd say they do pretty much like they probably had all the features that were going into FM15 already locked by probably like January or something like that. You never know, like. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Like it's good. I think it's good now, building up the anticipation that it was this time last year they'd already told you what was coming. Well, a bit of what was coming. Like they'd already posted screenshots about the small things, like how you could you could loan players straight back to their club, that kind of stuff after you signed them, which I was delighted came in. But no, it's good now. I think they're building up the anticipation nicely. Silence is golden in that sense, I think. And I am looking forward to it. It's another, the end of, is it next month or early November that they're going to release all the new screenshots and stuff?
They reckon that it's going to be features are going to be started rolling out in October and releasing the game in November. So he did that live kind of video casting the other day, and he just flat out refused to talk anything about FM15 during it. He just said, "I'm not going to mention a word." He said, "You can ask a wasty question, but I'm not going to talk about FM15." And that was 2 weeks ago, I think he did that. So you could be having anything.
Well, yeah, sure. For any, keep an eye on the Whizzkids page. Obviously, we will get all the new news and information about the game posted as soon as we get it. To move on now, just a quick word on our database and tactic Bible. The database, firstly, I'll let James let us all know about that and give it a quick plug.
Yep, we have our own transfer database that starts pretty much the day it's released. So whenever FM15 comes out, we open it up, we start doing work to that. We do, of course, transfers, loans of 6 months plus. We do the new Champions League, the Europa League teams. We do not touch stats at all. We believe SI are best at that, so we leave it to that. We are our own wonder kids as of this year. We change contracts, we edit stadium name changes, loads of small stuff, new captains, you name it, we do it. We are one of the best around at doing this, and our page has been going just over 3 years, and to date we have around 235,000 downloads, so we let that number speak for itself, and we will hopefully have more people downloading, taking an interest, and they know what we do. I think with that number it shows that people believe us. So we hope it's successful as it has been in recent years, and we will continue to do it.
And the next thing was our tactic Bible in the notes section. The reason why I wanted to touch on this one is because we are constantly getting questions on the page about what tactic is best for this and what tactic is best for that. And the truth is, there is no best tactic. It really all depends on the players you have, how you train them, and the opposition you're playing, obviously. Yeah, our tactic Bible was Andy's idea, so he can talk about that.
I just wanted to put it up there basically because, like you said, everybody's always asking us about what tactics do we use. Have you got a picture for our tactic? Have you got this? So I wanted to put it up there for everybody to have a chance to download and use our tactics to see how we play the game and what we do. And like Martin says, I can't not stress enough that even though we're doing very well with our tactics, just because we've done well, there's no guarantee at all that if you're downloading it's going to do well with your team. That is the main reason why I've had about 4 or 5 different tactics so far this FM. As every time I've done a new save, I've used different players, so I've had to create a new tactic to suit them players. I've had to change the way I play. Pretty much every save I've done so far this year. So, I mean, by all means, I love it that people download the tactics and try them out, and I love it when they work for you. But please don't take it as a guarantee that you're gonna all of a sudden have a killer tactic that's going to win you every single match, because it just really isn't going to work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've actually changed tactics 3 times this FM, which is 3 times more than I've done since FM 2005. Yeah, it is, different strokes for different folks, or teams in this case. But yeah, just do check out our tactic Bible and, try out our tactics. There is some very decent ones there. Next we have, lads, any handy tips or hints for playing Football Manager? For me, I find it's not really a tip. It's just in your tactics. Complete wing backs are the most effective. Left side, for your fullbacks or whatever. Complete wing back seems to be, for me, the most effective role you can use once you have fullbacks who can cross the ball and dribble a bit as well. The goals and assists you get from them, it's literally like having 2 wingers on each side of the field. It's fantastic. And other than that, that'd be my main tip. Go with the complete wing backs. They're very, very effective, lads.
Yep, I have to agree with you on that. With all the new roles that came into the game, that's probably my favourite. It's almost like having, say, 2 extra wingers or 2 latent Baines in your team. The amount of assists, crosses you get from that and that lead to goals is unbelievable. I really enjoy using that. I have 2 tips which are pretty standard. People should know them. The first one, when signing a contract at a club, take the lowest wage possible, because you're just taking money out of the club and that money goes to nothing. So there's no point in giving yourself a higher wage. It just affects you, your finances. And the second one is, if you're a smaller club, arrange more friendlies in pre-season to give yourself more money. Or another one similar to that, if you're on a bad run and say there's an international break, arrange a friendly against a smaller team, and hopefully you'll get a big win, big result, lots of goals, and it'll give your team confidence going into your next league match.
Have you really done that, James?
Yes.
I just holiday for the international breaks. I never do anything. I just see it as a kind of like a waste of time. Basically, I work out when I'm 3 days before my next game. I just go on holiday to that point and just give myself the 3-day build up to the game.
I holiday through all the international breaks as well. I come back a day before the game starts, then my next game, and it looks terrible though on your manager history, because once you've played about 10 or 15 seasons, you've literally holidayed through 20% of the save. It's ridiculous.
I suppose that does make your save look a little bit bad, but it's a good way to cut down save time.
And what's your helpful tip, Andy?
I would say my helpful tip is, please, wherever you do not be afraid to use instalment deals when you sign players. I know a lot of people think you've got to go bankrupt and blah blah blah, but if you use them correctly and you know that you're going to get success in the league and you're going to get success in the Champions League, you can always afford to cover it, no matter what. So don't be afraid at all to use instalment deals. Don't waste all your money if you don't have to. Spread it out over a good 48 months and you should never have any trouble with your finances.
Just two more quick tips I have, which I've just thought of now, listening to Andy and talking about the international breaks and all. I have found that congratulating players on their first international caps and their first international goals, right? Once you do that, that player will love you forever. They seem to just seem to take it so well, and you go onto their favourite list straight away. And if once you get that in there, the player will always listen to you when you tell them to sack their agent, which is my other tip. Always ask them to sack their agent. It will save you millions.
Yeah.
And once you won a trophy or two, and you've been nice to that player, they will always sack their agent, and it honestly saves you a lot of money. You get players, they're asking for a new contract, they want too much money and all. Another thing is always just never walk away from the contract negotiations. Always just leave the screen from a different direction, like just click on one of the options in the top bar and then continue your game. So if you walk away, you have to wait about 2 months before they'll even talk to you again, But yeah, that's my main tip. Sacking agents and congratulating players when they've done stuff on international duty. It makes a huge difference in how the players respond to you in the future. Anyone else got anything before we move on?
Yep, one more helpful tip that you're a big fan of, Martin. You bring this up a lot, is when offering contracts, obviously give them the 5-year contract and then give them the plus 3 years, which is effectively an 8-year contract without raising their wages.
Yeah,
It is essentially a stupidity test that most players fail.
I can't believe anybody that never uses them is unbelievable, to be fair. I mean, yes, initially you have to spend a little bit more to get them to agree to it. You might have to put maybe another 10 to 15k on the deal. But if you can get that extra 3 years, plus if you can take out the yearly percentage increase, the amount of money you can save in the long run is just unbelievable, because you don't have to bother trying to renegotiate contracts and then giving out signing on fees or anything like that. It's just a ridiculous amount of money you could save by doing that.
And actually, a similar clause to that you can only give to players over 25, when you offer them an extension once they've played a certain amount of games in the final years of their contract. That's what differs from that to the automatic extension is the players actually like that in their contracts. I found players are much more open to accepting a contract. Say they're 27, 28, if you give them the extra year, if they play 5, 10, 15 games for you, they're more open to accepting even a lower wage once you put that into their contract.
So far this FM, I think I've only signed one player, actually brought into the club one player over the age of 25, do you know what I'm saying? I never buy anybody over 25. Barely at all in FM.
No, I'm the same myself. I've just noticed that as well. When you have a player that you signed when they were 20 and you've kept them for an off, when you've signed a player when they were 20 and you've given them the slave labour 8-year contract with the extension, when you're finally giving them a new deal when they're in their mid to late 20s, you can throw that in and they're a lot happier. I wish we had wrote down these tips because I keep thinking of new ones and right, now the final segment we have here is our questions from the followers on the page, which was a roaring success. We got 2 whole questions, or 3 whole questions, I'm sorry. The first one was from Carl Graves, who said, have you got any tips on developing young players? Are you better off doing individual training, for example? My opinion on that is yes, you are. Always train in roles. Certain players are different, like for example, we've always harped on about Adam Campbell on the page. He's always best set just at training for finishing, heavy on finishing for the first few years. You have him, but for 90% of players, training them in specific roles, not necessarily the roles you're playing the players in. But like for any midfielder, for any centre midfielder, whether they're attacking or defensive, I'd always train them as a box-to-box midfielder, because it literally does tick more boxes in their stats. It covers a much vaster amount of stats than any other midfield training option. Lads, your opinions?
It's not that. Whatever you do as well, please, if you've got a star young wonder kid player that you want to turn into the best player in the world, whatever you do, loan him out. don't waste your time, don't bother doing it. He'll either get injured or he'll go and he'll sit in the reserves and maybe play 3 games. He won't get the right training. I think maybe twice I've ever seen a player go out on loan and come back and actually he's become a better player. And I think one of them was on your Roma save, wasn't it? It was the guy you got from Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, that was a freak incident. That
Yeah.
was the one and only time. It didn't change my mind on never loaning out players. I loaned them out because I didn't want them, and he just happened to come back amazing.
Yeah. But so I think that's about the only time I've ever really seen it happen. Oh, I think, was it last year as well? Edward, he loaned out that defensive midfielder at Wolves, and he came back and turned into a really, really amazing player, didn't he? I think it was called
For me?
Kerrigan, wasn't it?
Oh, for Edward. Yeah. I'll never forget. He doesn't let me forget that one.
Yeah. But I think that's the only 2 times I've ever seen a young player get loaned out and come back better.
What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think you lads both covered that pretty well. I agree. I mean, I also think you should have them in the first team, a youngster in the first team, but make them available for reserves for however 45 minutes or whatever, or the under 18s. There's no point in you having them in the under 18s all time and not giving them game time. If it's me personally, I always have my youngster on the bench. You might not even play them, but always have them on the bench. Give them a little bit of game time here and there. Make them available for your reserves. Have them tutored by someone of similar position and maybe similar personality. And yeah, train them heavy on whatever position you want them to play in. Players can sometimes adapt to better positions. I mean, for example, Will Hughes, everybody knows Will Hughes. He says centre midfielder in the game, but if you put him behind the striker as an attacking midfielder, he seems to play better there. But also, I've seen him in other saves play better as the centre midfielder. So you can train them to different positions. Don't just stick to that position. I did it with William Carvalho at Sporting Lisbon. He's an anchorman pretty much, but I also trained him to play central defence, and then he became pretty much my number 1 central defender there. He actually played there better than he did in his natural position.
Yeah, I do that every winger I sign. I always make sure I always retrain to play both flanks, because you can just save yourself a lot on having to buy reserve players for each position. If you can have like 4 wingers and they all can play right wing, left wing, it saves you a lot of time and effort.
One other thing on developing young players I want to add is that I see it on every Football Manager page and group out there, and it bothers the shit out of me. People who they post up screenshots of players, and they might be 18, 19, 20, 21, and they're asking, should I loan this player out to gain experience? This is a game. The players are they're not real players, and they don't really, they don't have personalities, they don't really have fears or nervousness, or, I know it says they do in the game, but they really don't.
It's mechanic, isn't it?
For Football Manager, the phrase, if they're good enough, they're old enough, could not be truer. It really, if you look at any of the screenshots of my saves, or Andy's, or James's, there is always 1 or 2 16-year-olds that are regularly used in our squads. It really doesn't matter what age they are. I've James, the Martin Odegaard that James created, and he's unbelievable. And he's 17, and he's getting in the current season I'm in with him. He has 10 goals and 10 assists from 15 starts and 15 sub appearances, and he's only 17. And this is playing Premiership, Champions League football. But really, don't buy into this. He's young. He needs to be loaned out. He doesn't. He needs to be played in your team, and he'll develop far better that way.
I did it with my second Liverpool save. I did this FM after the January window. I won the league first season, and that's with Harry Wilson and Jordan Imibi playing, I think, 22 games each in the league, because they had injuries, the wingers. So they both was playing pretty much first team. But I think they made Harry Wilson made something like 21 starts in the league for me that first season, and I still managed to win the league. I think he got something like about 6 assists, 3 or 4 goals or something like that. And that's Harry Wilson, who starts a long way behind a lot of other players, but was still good enough to play first team easily.
We got anything else to add to that, James?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, lads. I think we can go on to the next question.
I was just going to say one more thing. With playing youngsters, make sure you do always play them in the cup games, and don't be afraid to sacrifice the FA Cup and the COC Cup in the first season or two in producing your youngsters to become better, because you will win plenty of FA Cups and other cups all throughout your saves. So don't be afraid the first couple of seasons to maybe throw them two competitions underneath the bus a little bit in order to progress your players, because you will benefit from it long term by doing it.
Speaking of the using young players in cup games, have any of you guys ever noticed in Football Manager that the AI teams seem to rest players in the FA Cup, and yet they will always put out a first choice team in the Carling Cup or the Capital One Cup? It frustrates the hell out of me, really. Like, you get Chelsea away or Man City away in the fourth round of the Capital One Cup, and you know that Yaya and Aguero and all of them are going to be playing. Well, you get them in the fifth round of the FA Cup, and Boyata is in the team, Guidetti is playing. I find it happens every time. They don't play strong teams in the FA Cup unless it's like the semi-finals or the sixth round or something like that. But the Carling Cup or Capital One Cup, they seem to put out very strong teams all the time.
I think it's to do with the fitness levels of players, because I reckon that's how the game works it out. Because earlier on in the season, players' fitness is always a lot better. But by the time the FA Cup comes around, you've just got past a really, really, really heavy, like a game every other day Christmas period, that a lot of players are not fit. So that's when you see the team start to rotate in the players a little bit.
No, I noticed it with Barnet as well, even with playing in the qualifying rounds for the FA Cup and all that kind of stuff,
Really?
Like, they were taking like the FA Trophy and all more serious than the qualifying rounds of the FA Cup, and there's far more money in even those early rounds of the FA Cup than there is in having cup runs in the FA Trophy and all,
Actually, to be honest, I can't say I've really noticed, because when I've seen the lineups, more often not, no matter which cup competition I play in, they tend to make changes. They're never 100% the first choice team. They'll have 4 or 5 of the first choice players, but they'll have a few youngsters in all the time. So usually up front though, not really in defence. So you usually have like a young forward and maybe 1 or 2 young wingers, and maybe one of the fullbacks is usually a young player. But they do make changes pretty much every time I play them in the cups.
Alright, well, we proper went off topic there, but on to our next question. It's from Alistair Davis, and it's: would you guys consider doing an online FM league anytime in the future? To be blunt, Alistair, that's a no from me. I don't like any multiplayer games, to be honest, but especially with Football Manager. It's not something I'd ever do, especially after the awful experience I had with James about a year and a half ago.
Did you try to do an online game?
No, me and James came, and James will even admit this himself. I pretty much had one of the greatest ever teams you could ever see in Football Manager. It was my all-conquering Southampton team about 12 years into the future. Every player was pure world class. I had about 6 Messis in the team and about 4 Paolo Maldinis and a Peter Schmeichel. It was unbelievable. And James went out and absolutely wiped the floor with me. And it was, I still have nightmares about it. And so after that, online games are just done for me, to be honest. But I don't know. What about you guys? Would you ever do an online league?
No chance. No way. Never.
No, not for me neither. I'll have to say, I'm sorry, mate, but the problem is, I have limited time when I can play FM and when I can't. A lot of times when I'm playing it, I'm actually doing 2 or 3 things at once. Like I'm going off and helping the wife with something in the kitchen, just coming through and clicking the save through. And as soon as you do an online save, you have your FM time dictated to you by somebody else, and it's not something I particularly want to do personally. I like to play it at my own pace.
Yeah, you have to rely on people being there all at the same time, and there's a lot of waiting around. And I mean, unless you're like a young guy or a school kid, or you don't really have that time. People have jobs, people have families. It never happens. I remember seeing somebody trying to organise it once, and about 100 people trying to get involved. He made promises that he would sort it for weeks and weeks, and he let everybody down, and it was a big disappointment. I tried it once to play an actual league, and it probably lasted about a week or 2 into the game, because it was just a nightmare. It just wasn't good. I didn't enjoy it. I wouldn't try it again. I would maybe like, as I say, me and Martin, where I absolutely hammered him with my all-conquering 17-season Newcastle team that was unbelievable. I had this killer Russian that just absolutely mauled him.
I bet he was.
I'm back now. What was his name? Grabulov or something like that?
I bet you was bumping your gums after that, man, wasn't you?
Yeah,
I would have put my house on me beating James like 5-0 in that game. It was sickening.
Then, as I say, I would maybe do a head-to-head online again if both years are 2 years about 7-8 seasons in, and you've got your own teams, you've got your own regions. But as far as at the start and as a league, absolutely no chance. Never for me.
I do think SI put that in there because pretty much any game that comes out nowadays pretty much has to have a multiplayer option on it. But personally, I think if you wanted to play like a footy kind of management game type thing with online play, FIFA's pretty much got that covered now. You can do like management sims with that, and you can play online. And I bet it's a lot more fun playing that online against people than it is playing FM online. So that'd probably be my tip for you. That.
So yeah, sorry, Alistair. That one's a solid no from all of us. The last question was from Luke Dixon, who asked, would we be considering bringing FM out on like Xbox or PlayStation? And the answer to that is a no, because we don't make Football Manager. At the same time, I'll give you the reasons behind why it's not on the consoles. That's because if you played Football Manager 2005 or 2006 on the Xbox, you would know they were complete dog shit. Well, the consoles these days are very powerful. FM is even more powerful. There's a reason why it's only on PC. And if you're wondering why Football Manager handheld is on PlayStation Vita and all, that's because Football Manager handheld is not Football Manager. It's like light mayonnaise. It's not mayonnaise.
I actually,
So,
I watched this. I'll go back to the video cast I watched with Miles. It was with Miles and Ian McIntosh the other night, and he actually got asked this same question himself, and he said the main reason why they'll never do it again is financially. If Sega came to him and gave him X amount of money and said go try and make it again, they said they would try and do it again. But he said at the moment, because the sales was that poor when they did it the first time round, they'll never do it again. So
it was really awkward as well. I didn't have a laptop for a couple of months when the first version came out on the Xbox 360, and I bought it straight away just to get a fix kind of way. And it's so awkward with using a controller and all. It's a game that's meant to be played with a mouse. You know, it really is. You can't play it any other way. And yeah, you know, I'm sure the sales were poor because, you know, anybody who had any clue about Football Manager knew that what was the point in getting it for a console? Because, you know, even at the same time, the great thing about FM is you can multitask. You know, you can do what you want while you're playing it. It's not like playing Call of Duty or something like that where you have to be totally glued into it. But
to be fair,
yeah, just
I can say
sorry, go ahead.
It's a lot shinier now. It's got a lot of baubles on it. It's a lot prettier and a lot of things. Essentially, at its heart, FM is still the same game that came out on the Amiga 20 odd years ago. Do you know what I mean? At its heart, it's still that same kind of game. So, to me, it should always be on a PC. It's just where it belongs, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, Luke Dixon. That's a no from us and a no from Sports Interactive,
Yeah.
from what I can tell.
I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
That about wraps it up. If you will be posting this on the page as soon as we can. Any feedback, constructive feedback, would be greatly appreciated, because this is a first-time effort, and you know, I'm sure it was a bit patchy in places, but we'll try our best if we ever do another one. So it's a goodbye from me anyway, and lads.
It's goodbye from me as well. I was glad to do it anyway. It was quite fun. I actually enjoyed it personally, but I hope you all do when you listen to it.
alright, cheers guys, thanks for listening, and yeah, goodbye from me.
And overall, thank you very much for following the page as long as you can. When myself, James, and our old admin, Steve Hanton, when we started the page together, almost 3 years ago now, we never really would have expected we would have gotten over 12,000 likes.
It's great to keep going on. When I came onto the page, a little over a year ago you had 3,000 likes, and now I've been on the page for just a year and we have nearly 30,000 likes. So 10,000 likes thanks to me.
I don't know about that. And one other last thing is just to give an extra shout out to Edvard, who can't be here. He's a great admin who probably, he probably does, he does the best saves out of us all, I think. What he does with Norwegian teams is absolutely amazing, and none of us have even come close to matching it. So, yeah,
of the page.
Thanks for all your hard work. Yeah. But, yeah, so that does wrap it up. So, yeah, thank you and good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.